Hello, we're going to talk about a video that arrived in my inbox yesterday. Very, very interesting video and very pertinent to what we're doing.
And I also got the video, even I don't subscribe on Michael J. Fox, because that's one of the smart things of being the group leader that people send in material, so I get fast updated about everything. Here's the front page of the video. How does stress affect Parkinson? And it's actually, even 10 years ago, it was accepted that stress has an impact on your symptoms. What did you have of reflection back in time? Were you told that?
I was never told that, but I always suspected it because I had a very stressful time shortly before well, for quite a few years before my diagnosis. So I always suspected that stress was the cause, and my partner's absolutely convinced that stress is the cause.
Yeah. And
He,
here they talk more about how it affected, that you sort of have got it and then it affects you. They use the word it exacerbate your symptoms.
yeah, but there's an interesting quote in the video, Lilian. Stress can be the trigger that brings out Parkinson's symptoms and diagnosis. So there's an acknowledgement there that stress is actually the cause.
The straw that broke the camel's back.
Yeah, definitely. But I mean, it has to be chronic stress. It has to be a long time of being stressed, I think, in order for this to affect your brain and your body so badly.
That's a belief.
That's a
So,
belief. That's a belief.
yeah.
Let's talk about stress. Stress is a normal part of life. We all have it, whether from work, family, or living with disease.
What I just say here already is that we have all had it, but how much have we been told about it?
Hmm.
Why is it not when we all have it, when it affects all of us, why is it not a subject in school?
Yeah, I was just thinking the same thing. Why are we not taught how to manage our stress when we're young, which would avoid all these chronic illnesses?
And maybe a doctor can tell us, but how many hours of education do we think a doctor or neurologist have had during their education?
About stress,
Yeah,
very little.
yeah.
I don't think it's given the significance it needs to be given.
So that you feel stress both emotionally and physically. Emotional effects can be things like irritability, frustration, or anxiety, and physical effects can be tense shoulders, upset stomach, or even headaches. Now, some stress is good. It helps us focus, meet a deadline, or get out of the way of danger. Exercise is an example of good stress. But when stress settles in the background and it's always there, even if we don't notice it, it can be harmful to our bodies and our brains.
That sort of give it away, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with her more about that. I feel this every day. I feel the effect of stress on my body every day.
Everybody should know it, and it should be talked about at the time of diagnosis, if I should say so.
Absolutely.
Would that have been helpful if your doctor had told you about the stress dimension in this?
Yes, completely changed what the course of events for me. It would, definitely.
This is called chronic stress. Research is uncovering more and more about how chronic stress impacts our health. Stress is more than just a feeling. It has actual physical impacts in the body and in the brain.
And again, here is
Mm.
it is well known that it impacts your body and brain.
Yeah.
Just to stress that it's 10 years ago I realized this connection and how much it's affected people with chronic illness.
Stress causes the body to release hormones, chemicals, and other factors that move us into what's called fight or flight mode. It increases blood pressure, quickens our breathing, and tenses our muscles.
And here it's the symptoms she talk about here. It's noradrenaline actually that have these effects when you go into fight, flight, and freeze. It ensures that there will be a bigger blood flow to the muscles, so you can fight and flight. And
Absolutely.
back in the 70s, when people got a more sedentary lifestyle, suddenly businessmen dropped dead from heart attacks and so on. So that was where I heard the word the first time. When did you figure out that there was a word called stress?
Probably around the same time as you, Lilian. I remember hearing about people dropping dead of heart attacks in the 1970s because of their stressful sedentary jobs that they did. And the majority of people nowadays are still doing stressful sedentary jobs where they sit down all day long and they're bombarded with stressful information and stressful things to do, and they just tolerate it. And it needs to change. We need to spend more time managing our stress.
It's sort of a fact that you can die of stress.
Yeah.
We could reverse engineer it and say maybe it has a lot other physical impacts than just that.
I'm sure it does.
Let me give you an example of this in daily life. Say you're arguing with someone. Do you get defensive? Does your voice get louder? Do you feel flushed? That could be your fight mechanism. Or if instead you shut down the conversation or remove yourself from the situation, that could be your flight response.
Did you have similar stress before you were diagnosed?
Yeah. I was in a very stressful situation for quite a number of years, and it's led me to where I am now.
Yeah, and that's what's your job stress.
Yeah.
When stress passes, your body and your nervous system go back to a calm state, what we call rest and digest. And you all know how important digestion and gut movement is in Parkinson's. But if stress doesn't fully go away, the body stays in fight or flight mode, which means it continues to keep blood pressure up, cause inflammation, and even potentially change the brain in not so good ways. You heard that right. Stress can damage the brain's memory areas, reinforce anxiety and fear, and impact the release of dopamine and other brain chemicals.
Here we have the links between the fight, flight, and freeze and Parkinson, and it's all about dopamine in many ways.
In people with Parkinson's, stress can have other effects too. Here are 4 potential effects. First, stress can be the trigger that brings out Parkinson's symptoms and diagnosis in some people. A stressful situation, like an illness, death of a loved one, or loss of a job, can sometimes happen right before diagnosis.
And as you said before, it's often lifelong stress, and then this straw that broke the camel's back, but it can also be one big thing that is actually the main cause. The interesting thing is that that one big thing can be in different places of your timeline. It doesn't need to be yesterday. It can be a year ago or 50 years ago.
Yeah.
And that's sort of the interesting thing in this, that's a piece of the puzzle people don't understand. It doesn't need to be in the close past. So
No, it doesn't. It doesn't, Lily. And you can have trauma from a very young age, and it stays with you. You know, it shapes who you are in a way, and it needs to be dealt with because it's very damaging, I think.
And I have one client, my first client of all, had one big trauma, very big trauma when he was 4 because his father attacked his mother with a knife and he saw blood and these parents that were fighting. And that was the one trigger he had. So when we dealt with that and his embarrassment of having symptoms, that was it. And he now have no diagnosis because he was so lucky he had a new neurologist that sort of questioned why he didn't have any tremor anymore. And he and I knew that it was due to the trauma treatment. He was just lucky that he got this new neurologist. And then we can actually ponder one more thing, because when he was a child, he also got diagnosed with seizures. And he's been taking medication from that ever since. So who knows, maybe there's also a connection with a little child that developed seizure when he was 4, 5, 6, and later in life developed Parkinson's. And due to that, basically one instance of extreme intense stress got into a DAT scan that showed what we call Parkinson. And 3 years after he got a new neurologist, he got a clean DAT scan, free of the stress.
It's amazing.
And I mean, that random happened that you only have one big thing. Set it free if you have one trauma or you have 100 smaller things. That's sort of what science haven't understood until now.
And stress uncovered it. Now, this isn't to say that any one moment is responsible for causing Parkinson's. It's just to explain how stress might help bring it out. Second,
and that's sort of the misconception right now, if I should say it, that there's one situation that brings it out. So why not be curious and say, what if there's more? If I should say, you also had these years with intense job stress, but was there other traumas back in time in your life?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I had traumas, family-related traumas and school-related traumas and all kinds of things that might not appear to be very traumatic to some people, but when you're a child, these things are very upsetting, and you store them in your body and your brain, and you remember them or you don't remember them, but they affect your behavior and affect your level of stress and change who you are, if you like. So yeah, I'd say I've definitely had factors in my past that have affected me, and the cumulative effect of that plus more recent stress is what led to my diagnosis.
Yeah, exactly.
stress can temporarily worsen symptoms. It can increase tremor, dyskinesia, walking problems, or mood, sleep, or memory changes.
And it was here where I started to zoom in on that exact difference between high peak of symptoms and low peak of symptoms. There's one little funny thing in what she's saying. What is your knowledge about dyskinesia?
Dyskinesia is, for me, is caused by too much dopamine medication.
And that's the common knowledge, I guess. But people are not always being taught that, or what? Did you know, what were you told about the side effects when you got on the medication?
I wasn't told about any of the side effects, Lilian, and I wish I was, because I wouldn't have started it, because they are quite horrible. And I know the dyskinesia is caused by the medication because it has a cumulative effect as you go through the day. And I always get dyskinesia in the evening after I've been on the medication all day long. So I know that that's the reason, because I don't have it in the morning when I'm not on the medication.
And can you say reversing of Parkinson is to be very, very curious about all these small details, all the fluctuation in whatever symptoms you have.
Yeah, it's kind of about observing yourself, observing your symptoms, being very questioning about them.
Here's the challenge. People with Parkinson's report feeling more stress than people without the disease. That's not surprising considering the stress of living with a chronic illness.
So here we have two things. Yes, it's the stress that funnel you into the symptoms, and how is it to get a diagnosis of Parkinson? How did you feel?
It's horrible. It's very, very stressful. I still think about it most days, actually, because it was such a it's so devastating because you think of it as a degenerative condition and you don't feel as if you have any options. It's horrible. You feel
So is that
hopeless.
helpful? Is that helpful
No,
that
not
you're
at all,
told that?
because you don't want to feel hopeless. Hope is the only thing that we have, really.
And now you have been in my circles for plus a year now. But before in time, had you heard about people that actually managed to reduce symptoms?
I had, yes, I'd read a couple of books about people who'd managed to reduce symptoms. Some of them get their diagnosis reversed, which is amazing.
Yeah, and that's my hope course is sort of based on the, I call it the modeling of these people. How did they do it? Reading more and more of their stories, I figured out what was their common tactics and strategies and thinking about that.
But here's the good news. There's a lot you can do to control how you respond to stress. Here's how. First, acknowledge stress. This is part of being human. It doesn't make you weak. Second, get curious about your stress. What brings it on? Is it feeling tired or rushed or feeling overwhelmed by work or family or just life in general? How does your stress show up? Do your shoulders go up by your ears? Do you clench your fists or your jaw? Do you get short with others? Third,
That's an essential part, that you need to get curious about your symptoms.
Absolutely.
And that was one of the things I figured out, that people that reverse their illness actually spend some time watching that. So again, in my courses, it's one of the things I help people to establish a routine.